We are continuing on our study of Zen Mind Beginner's Mind, and we are on limiting your activity, page 75 in my version. In our practice, we have no particular purpose or goal, nor any special object of worship. In this respect, our practice is somewhat different from the usual religious practices. Joshu, a great Chinese Zen master, said, "A clay Buddha cannot cross water. A bronze Buddha cannot get through a furnace. A wooden Buddha cannot get through fire." Whatever it is, if your practice is directed towards some particular object, such as clay, a bronze, or a wooden Buddha, it will not always work. So as long as you have some particular goal in your practice, that practice will not help you completely. It may help you as long as you are directed towards that goal, but when you resume your everyday life, it will not work. You may think that if there is no purpose or goal in our practice, we will not know what to do. But there is a way. The way to practice without having any goal is to limit your activity or to be concentrated on what you are doing in this moment. Instead of having some particular mind, you should limit your activity. When your mind is wandering about elsewhere, you have no chance to express yourself. But if you limit your activity to what you can do just now, in this moment, then you can express fully your true nature, which is the universal Buddha nature. This is our way. Buddha nature, you could say, is big mind. Seems to me that many of us, when we are having difficulty, myself included, we are full of thoughts and emotions and sensations, and there's a lot of activity. And our practice is actually to limit our activity. It is to notice what is going on in our lives. Right? Now, the paradox is actually we only know one thing at a time. In this moment, there's only this. However, we don't pay attention. We focus on results for the most part. If you look in the chat, notice my question was, how do you know? Right? Well, let me look at the chat again. Right? How is it to limit your activity bodily? Now, most of us, when we think limit, we say, especially in body, oh, I must be still. She's probably asking me to be still. And stillness has its purpose, without doubt. Why? We do emphasize at times sitting still. And in Zen, we actually emphasize sitting still a lot. And that is because in stillness, we can notice subtleties. So much of the instruction of practice is to notice, to limit your activity to knowing certain things, to pay attention to specific things, specific places. First foundation of mindfulness, to notice the limits of your activity in the body. What is the feeling of the sitting bones on the seat, the cushion, the feet on the floor, the knees on the floor, your back or your head if you're lying down in your meditative posture? What is it to feel the inhale and the exhale? You limit your awareness of your activity and you focus wholeheartedly, not just with your mind. We think of limiting as very mind-based for most of us, or to hold still in a way that doesn't give us a sense of what is going on, right? Most of us think of limit as, hey, especially in America, right? I should have the freedom to do whatever the fuck I want. Otherwise, it's un-American, isn't it? You cannot limit me. There's lots of fights about being limited, is there not? And some of those fights are, have their uses. I'm not saying, right? And so much of our practice is actually to be able to pay attention where we want to pay attention, to do concentration, to use the quality of mindfulness to attend to where we're paying attention, to manage it, to regulate it in a useful, skillful, wholesome way. Now, notice most of your answers are what you think of as the result. Painful, sense of release, easy. Oh, some of this is easy. Limiting my activity bodily means sensing muscle tension in my body and purposely relaxing it. Feels great. Okay, restful, stillness. Now, a lot of it is your description of what it is. The question is, how do you do it? How do you do it? Concentration is one. So we need to have these methods, these skills to be able to pay attention and to limit our activity so that we are fully aware of what's going on. Most of you didn't say, oh, my shoulders, when I limit my activity onto the shoulders, I have a sense that it's tense. How do you limit your activity to knowing, to your attention? What is it that's easing, calm? Now, I did ask you at the end of the meditation to say, what is the result? So mostly we go for result. We want calm Buddha. He has bronze and wood and all that. And I love all that, I can't go through certain things. But notice when we have a goal in mind, my meditation should result in calm and ease. Then when there's not calm and ease, when there's a furnace, you are not going to be able to go through it. When your life is in turmoil, your Buddha will melt. My calm, I've had a lot of melting, calm, easeful Buddha these last few weeks, right? When I hold on to that, I'm not going to get that result. But if where do I notice in my body, where is there ease? Where is there calm? Not as a goal, but as actuality, as actual experience. Our fundamental practice is to notice what is going on. Even in deep crying, the inhale can be a huge relief. Actually, when I had this overwhelming grief kind of crying, it was just all breath, like, and it was actually the exhale. It was the relief. I myself usually think the inhale is a relief. I've just said that to you a few minutes ago. But when I remember back to when grief was just released completely, it was the exhale. I read recently, and I read the sentence wrong from someone who said, we spend our time storing stuff in the heart. And I read it as shoring the heart. And because that's my that's what I do. I shore up my heart, trying not to feel things, right? My favorite song when I was a kid was, I am a rock. I was a rock Buddha. But rocks move, don't they? Rocks just sand or glass, depending what kind of rock you are. So we're practicing actually to pay attention, to limit our activity so that we can know the activity completely. What about emotions? What did you all put for emotion? Released, encouraging, relieving, spacious, confused, confusion, calm, like letting go, relief. No one really wrote, how is it that you limit your activity on that? When you notice an emotion that is spinning out of control, we do have to learn to limit the going of that emotion. It's a different thing when the emotion arises and we're fully aware of its course than when it is projected in a way that's habitual and forced. Again, I'll just talk about grief because that's the one I know really well. And some of you have heard this story, but grief has been my big thing. And mostly I notice that when I cry, I get a lot of snot. It's all congested. It's very hard to cry. I mean, I could be crying, but it's like, that kind of crying. And then one time when one of the abbots died and the community got together and sat in the Buddha hall and listened to his last talk, Abbot Steve Stuckey, sitting there with the community, tears just rolled down my eyes. There was no snot, just tears rolling. Because I was in Zen, we sit Zazen. And I wasn't trying to sit Zazen, I just was held by the community. And I was there to be with the community and to be there to experience this last talk after he had died. And it was actually a powerful moment for me to realize that when I wasn't resisting what I think would happen to me or how grief should be, then it was just a flowing. Then I had that other grief where it's just breath, right? Just breath for 20 minutes, just like I was bent over, just the whole body, just releasing 44 years of grief for my mother's death. So what is it to notice that, I separate them out, but how much of when we are aware of something, it actually is the complete body, the sensation, the emotion. There were no thoughts. There were no thoughts about how I should grieve. Just the grieving, the activity of grief. But we want to be really careful. And this is why that we don't just take on, I just heard Reverend Lien said, full grief is just a body. So now when I want to grieve, I'm just going to let the body do it, whatever. I've tried that. And then I'm like, How much of it is making myself do something bodily and how much is my mind trying to. So how is it then? This is why we practice to notice sensation when there's sensation, emotions when they're emotion, and thought when it's thought, so that we can just let it happen. Because so much of when we're not able to experience things, we limit ourselves by not limiting other things, mostly thoughts, as many of you put. Our thoughts control so much of what we do. Our thoughts about how we should, right? How we should feel about this, how we should express this, how should we think about this? Who am I in this? That's a should, right? I should be like this. And so, how is it that when we can limit certain things so that we can fully experience other aspects of ourselves, not as compartmentalizing, as clarity of knowing? There's a difference. Compartmentalizing means you shut something out. Now, sometimes compartmentalizing is useful, right? Certain times in our lives, compartmentalizing is a great defense mechanism, and that's why we have it. But when we're talking about being able to fully experience our life when we need to, in moments of living, or moments in which our life is asking us to be fully present with what is. When we practice Zazen, we limit our activity to the smallest extent. Just keeping the right posture and being concentrated on sitting is how we express the universal nature. Then we become Buddha and we express Buddha nature. Now, when we start out in posture, many of you know, in Zen, we just talk about posture. When we give you meditation instruction, we just give you posture. We do count breath, but mostly it's just posture. And when we start to learn something, there's a lot of tightness. Oh, yeah. Now, many of you have taken 1.0 many times now, at least twice. And how is it this time when it's not about doing it right, but it's about embodying open chest? In fact, right now, I'll give it a try. Close your eyes so you don't feel judged, and also you're bringing the awareness, your attention inside. Take a deep breath, feel the lungs expanding, the chest rising, and on the exhale, remember that's how you exhale, and then you just let the chest stay open and upright. That is the embodying. And do it a few times. The first time or second time, maybe you're like, oh, what is she saying? Am I doing it or not? Or you're going, fuck what she's saying. This is how I'm doing. That's also a response there. Huh? And then do it a few times so that what is it that you yourself know it, not as a reaction, not as a doing, not as an intellectual knowing, but the body taking the posture that feels open, receptive, alive. This is the posture of awakening. Now, what is it to experience this posture and now bring up an emotion that perhaps you're having some difficulty with? What is it to feel the breath with that as you're keeping the chest open? Where is there over effort? And how do you attend to that? How do you limit tenseness by relaxing? How do you limit judgment? This is stupid. I don't want to do this. What's the point of this? Coming back to perhaps just the sensation at the chest as it's open, or quieting the thoughts. So this is skillful limiting, disengaging from certain things and paying attention elsewhere. This is the practice of limiting our activity. You can come back whenever you're ready. There is no practice that isn't about limiting, because it asks us to focus. It asks us to pay attention in a real concentrated way. That's the kind of limiting we're talking about. Especially when things are chaotic and we're not sure how to go on. How can we use in a wholesome, skillful way to give ourselves a sense of what it is to be alive in the midst of grief or sadness or joy or whatever it is. So instead of having some object of worship, how I should be, don't tell me you don't worship who you think you should be. I worship so many of myself, right? When you solidify, that's worshiping. Responsible Buddha, calm Buddha. All right, this is me, calm Buddha. All right. Isn't that our idea of what we should be as Buddha, as opposed to what is happening right now? So instead of having some object of worship, we just concentrate on the activity which we do in each moment. But you have to be aware of what you're doing in each moment. When you bow, you should just bow. When you sit, you should just sit. When you eat, you should just eat. How many of you, when we chanted the rope chant, say, I am chant Buddha. I know this chant Buddha. Everyone else doesn't know, and I'm the chant Buddha. This is the correct way. If you do this, the universal nature is there. In Japanese, we call it Ichigo Zamai, or one act samadhi. The Zamai or samadhi is concentration. Ichigo is one practice. I think some of you who practice Zazen here may believe in some other religion. There are a lot of Lutherans and Jews at Zen Center. But I do not mind. Our practice has nothing to do with some particular religious belief. And for you, there's no need to hesitate to practice our way, because it has nothing to do with Christianity or Shintoism or Hinduism. I'm a Buddhist when it's like this. Should I be a Buddhist or should I be a Buddhist? Is this being a Buddhist or not being a Buddhist? Our practice is for everyone. Usually when someone believes in a particular religion, his or their attitude becomes more and more a sharp angle pointing away from himself. Judgment. But our way is not like this. In our way, the point of the sharp angle is always towards ourselves, not away from ourselves. We pay attention here. So there is no need to worry about the difference between Buddhism and the religion you may believe in. Joshu's statement about the different Buddhas concerns those who direct their practice towards some particular Buddha. One kind of Buddha will not serve your purpose completely. You will have to throw it away sometime, or at least ignore it. But if you understand the secret of our practice, wherever you go, you yourself are boss, sometimes called the owner, with a big O. No matter what the situation, you cannot neglect Buddha because you yourself are Buddha. Sometimes people think he doesn't really speak English well, but notice, because you yourself are Buddha. Because you're not just one Buddha. You're Buddha depending on conditions. Only this Buddha will help you completely